I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Back again, Sunday night, back again.
Yeah, we're rolling into it.
We're rolling right into it. We took a break for the Super Bowl. We're back at you live.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. We were here on Christmas Eve. We were here New Year's Eve. We hold nothing sacred. Super Bowl, we're not playing.
It's a little special, especially up here.
It's a special day for us, and unfortunately, you know, it was a great game. It was a great game. Unfortunately, I didn't see an outcome that I would have liked either way because I don't like the Patriots, and I'm a Cowboys fan, so obviously I'm not rooting for the Eagles, but I got a great game. So
you did,
and I had a good time.
Hey, it's another Sunday night. It's Pint of Comics. We are Sir John,
Johnny Ganache,
WESU FM Middletown 88.1, all over your airwaves.
That's right. Everywhere you look, we're there.
Well, we try to be anyway. Hey, we got a special guest tonight.
We do. Tell me all about him.
Our special guest for tonight, whatever date this is, because I've completely forgotten.
February 11th,
Thank
2018.
you very much. At least you know it.
Yep.
It's Tom Batiuk, the creator of a couple of different comic strips, newspaper strips, I should say. Funky Winkerbean being the key one, Crankshaft being another, and there are a couple other more that we could bring up as the evening wears on here.
That's right.
But let's get him on.
Let's bring him in. Let's use the magic of the phone line.
The magic of the phone line. Tom, you there?
Hi guys, yeah, I'm here.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. You sound good.
Yeah, we're doing excellent. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, Tom, let's talk comic strips for a second here. We've had a couple of well-known people come on and talk about the procedure of how it is with creating a comic strip. But Funky Winkerbean, I mean, you're talking a long period of time you've been doing this. So
yeah, it's this March marks the 46th year that I'll be doing it. So it is a long time.
It's a long time, and it's a strip that's very popular, or at least when I was growing up, was a very popular saved strip in our household. I mean, it was the thing. My sister and my brother are older than me, so they kind of keyed into the school nature of it, I think, more than I did until I became high school age. But I still found plenty of things to laugh about it, up to the point where there were some big changes in the strip, which I thought were exceptionally well done. I know that John is a little less aware of Funky.
I honestly am. I will say this: as a kid, I was a fan of comic strips to an extent, not to the extent of you. But I will say this: Funky Winkerbean is a name. I think it's a name. You did a great job naming it because even as someone who's not really read the strip or read it in a long time, the name is everybody. I think everybody knows that name. It's not like
I would hope so.
Yeah, it's definitely not Jim Smith. That's for sure.
Oh, that's good to hear because I'm thinking there are times when I'm sitting here thinking. If I'd known it was going to last 46 years, I might have worked a little harder on that name.
What was there an actual what's the word
the impetus
or influence for that name? Was there a reason you picked that name?
Yes, there was. The strip was ready to go, and the lead character I named him after my college roommate Tom Dickerson. So his name was TD, and so the syndicate comes to me like at the 11th hour, and it's like, well, there's this strip Doonesbury, and they have a character called BD, and Doonesbury was pretty new at that time. I take it back. I had seen a little bit of it because when I was in New York at Universal Press, they showed me some Doonesbury stuff, which is pretty depressing when you're taking your own strip out, and they hand you a Doonesbury book to read. Oh, my God. Okay, we had to change the name. So I go back to my art classes the next day at Eastern Heights Junior High in Elyria, Ohio, and I hand out a sheet of paper to everybody. And I say, just write down any kind of name you think is funny, whatever amuses you, and just write it down, right? What comes to mind. I took all those home. My wife, Kathy, and I sat in our apartment at the kitchen table going through all those names, and I think I liked Winkerbean. I thought maybe they'd call it Winkerbean and Company. My wife, Kathy, likes Funky, and in a brilliant stroke of compromise, we called it Funky Winkerbean. And I've always had this shadow of fear over me ever since. It was kind of funny because I gave a talk last fall in Cleveland at the Music Box Supper Club, and I've always been afraid of one of the lines in my talk is that I've been afraid that one night I'm going to be giving a talk and some person's going to stand up back there from Eastern Heights Junior High, from one of my classes, and then his or her attorney's going to stand up.
I was going to ask, did the person who came up with either name ever step forward and say, "Hey, look, I was the guy that said Winkerbean, or I was the girl that said Winkerbean"?
No, but there was somebody at the last talk, and it was kind of funny. Well, not kind of funny. It was very sad, actually. I use that line in every single talk, and I'm at the supper club, and I didn't use the line. I just kind of skipped over it, and I don't know why. I mean, I just didn't remember it at the moment. And afterwards, I'm signing books, and this guy comes up. I was in your class back then. I go, oh my God! It would have been so great to have the person actually stand up. After giving this talk for like a year and a half and mentioning that all the time. But that's how Funky Winkerbean came about. That's how Funky got his name.
No kidding. There's always some kind of fun story behind all that. It's just
yeah, especially since you had something else planned out. And then it just it didn't work out, so you had to go right back to the drawing board.
How many papers did it start in initially?
I think Funky started in '78, which is a good start.
Yeah,
it was a good jump off, and I was really fortunate. I was with a syndicate. The sales staff had just changed. They'd gotten rid of a lot of salesmen, and the head of the sales staff was a former wrestling coach at a high school. And he just got a bunch of his fellow teachers and people in education, brought him on board as salesmen. So that helped me a lot because they knew the material, they knew what I was doing, and I think it helped Funky a great deal in the beginning.
So in a case like this, where we have listeners who probably, like I said, are fans, and we have listeners who are probably know the name. What would you give? I know we're going to talk about the changes you've made,
Sure.
almost like the retcons you've done to the book or to the strip. But what would be like your bumper sticker description of the strip if you were to just give someone the quick description of what it's about?
Wow,
Yeah.
That's tough.
It is,
and it's actually what's tough for the salesman, because I actually had a salesman one time tell me, he says, your strip is very hard to sell because it's not a cat.
That's actually funny, because I was going to say the example would be like Heathcliff is about alley cat. Garfield is about a house cat.
Yeah. So I really wouldn't know, but you've basically, it's a repertory company, and you followed the lives of these people in the town of WESU as they've grown up from high school students to now late middle-aged adults. I didn't necessarily strictly plan it that way. I always did want the characters to grow up, I guess, but I didn't anticipate it coming, the way turning into what it has turned into. And I've made it very very hard to categorize. I can't say uncategorizable. I don't know how to say that. It's hard to categorize.
That is a tough word.
Yeah, it is. And so, but that's what makes it unique too, because there's very few other strips that are quite like that.
I would say so. At this point, yeah, you're almost unique. I think at this point in the strip's life. I mean, the early days, yeah, it was very individual, not serialized. So you had the
Sure.
gag strip and that sort of thing. And sure, there were, I recall a couple of 3-4 days would roll together, or a whole week, I guess maybe. But up until now, it's more, I guess, dramatically put together.
Yeah, it's changed. Yeah, the analogy I use is when you're starting out, you're doing gags because you don't have a backstory. You
Right.
don't have anything to play with. Then it goes from gags to like sitcoms. So you have a football coach now, you've got a band director, and what if they both want to use the field at the same time? Okay, that works, and you have a little week thing. And so then I would do a week's worth of stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then eventually, if you're lucky, it turns into movies. And, you get to, do long form humor. And it's much, much different. That doesn't mean any one of those stages is necessarily wrong. I was just at a book signing this weekend, and I had an idle moment, so I'm looking at my book, leafing through it. And I'm reading some of the stuff, and I still like a lot of the earlier material that, it held up. But I also like what I can write now. I've sort of carved out a space for myself where I can write things that other people aren't allowed to write, I guess. I do things you couldn't do in Blondie. It's just the way it is. I've managed to do that, which is very fortunate. Not only that, but my readers have let me do that,
Well,
go ahead.
I think in the case of the characters from the strip, they're believable, regardless of the early gag-oriented stuff. You had characters that you started to, as a reader, you'd become interested in. I mean, particularly Harry Dinkle. The band leader.
Sure.
Harry Dinkle.
Well, think about it now here, John. This is a character. He's a band leader, and I mean, I don't know about you when you were growing up, but band was a big thing around us all the time, and the band leader was a personality. So to have a personality like that in Funky Winkerbean, it just made it much more interesting. Particularly his dedication to his craft, I think, is the best way of putting it.
A lot of the teen strips that had preceded Funky, they were done by middle-aged guys who were already middle-aged when they started them. And so it was football and cheerleaders and just the usual tropes and kids hanging on the phone and parents yelling at them to get off the phone and clean the room and stuff like that. And I sort of vowed never to do any of that stuff when I started. And I was only like 23, 24. 24 actually when it launched. So I came at it from a different viewpoint. Plus, I was in education, but I was also in band when I was in school. And you're right. All of a sudden, I just sort of inadvertently tapped into something. I mean, I thought I was just kind of ripping on my band director. But all of a sudden, there's this huge audience that's never had any attention paid to them. And the other thing that made those work, it was an inside job, and that's always better.
Yeah.
So I've got a question. Actually, we'll get back into the plot, and I really want to get into like the changes that you made. But what about the creative process in terms of, we talk to comic book artists, and a 22-page comic book might take them a month or two, depending on who it is, to draw. What is the creative process when you're working on a daily comic strip for you? At any point, like maybe when you began, I'm sure it's different now with the advent of how art has changed. If you do anything digitally, I don't know how that all works. But how was your process? Like, would you plot out and write in the same day, or?
Well, going way back when I first started out, I would allot some time each day to write, and then I would sit and write like a mad fool. I was always afraid of sitting there and not writing anything down, and so I would sit down and write, 20 or 30 ideas. Not all good ones, but I would write 20 or 30 ideas. And I have this, in fact, I'm looking at it right now next to my drawing board. There's this shelf that's just lined with these black notebooks that I used to fill up with this stuff. I only took the cream off the top of that stuff. And so anybody out there, by the way, I don't know why anybody would want to start a comic strip in a newspaper these days, but if they want one and they want to do a bad one, I've got books full of bad material. Welcome to it. But that's how I would start. So I would write like that. And then I learned, it sort of gradually started to evolve. And one of the biggest changes that happened to the writing came when I got a year ahead on Funky and on Crankshaft. Because then, now I could take longer thoughts. And Lisa's story would not exist if I was still on a 6-week deadline.
Okay.
I never would have had the time to research it and plot it and think about it and let it gestate. I would have been having to spew things out too fast. So getting ahead to that degree really helped me. And then it also changed how I did things. I still put ideas down in notebooks, but they're just ideas. I don't write the whole thing out anymore. And so I'll go into a story, and then I'll flip through my notebook, just looking for things that complement what I'm writing about at the moment. So the process has changed, but I sort of carry ideas around for a long time, and then they start to pop out. One example is, and I like this. You talked about retconning earlier. I've gone back and I really retconned a whole bunch of stuff. Like I used to have a talking leaf on a tree. Every fall there'd be these leaves talking about, being afraid to fall off the tree, and they go, well, that's not a problem. It's not falling, breaking free from the tree. It's the fall that kills you.
I forgot about those. Wow.
Yeah, and those were just written. I just wrote that came to mind because I just put it on my blog because I was writing about those were written because I was way behind.
Okay.
And I could do them real fast, and it's always kind of funny because people come up and they mention them as like their favorite. Okay, but I retconned them out. I at one point had Les talk about how he used to look out the window and imagine that the leaves were talking. So I gradually took all those things and kind of cleaned them up a little bit. But one recently, and I carried this idea around for a long time until I found a way to kind of make it work. When back in the day, Bull Bushka was a school star fullback, and their arch rival was Big Walnut Tech. So I would just do these kind of dumb football jokes and stuff. Now I thought I started thinking about CTE and what football players are suffering with.
Right.
And so I'm doing this series now with Bull, who's been diagnosed with CTE, but all of a sudden he's becoming befriended by a linebacker from the former arch rival school, Buck Bedlow. I sort of do the Stan Lee thing. Everybody has the names, so all alliterative. But, and so I'm still doing football jokes. And they're not even really jokes. They're just, there's humor in there. It's just not the same kind of humor. And I'm just taking it from a totally different angle, from a grown-up angle. And that's a lot of fun. It's fun to realize that the strip has traveled that distance.
And again, I mean, it's these characters that you, or like I say, me as a reader has gotten attached to through the comedy in the early days, and now you're seeing them move on to a different level in life, and you still can see the old strips in the current version of the characters, which are still enjoyable regardless of whatever storyline you've got them going through at the time, which some are a little close to home for some people, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what I was trying to say. You put it much better than I did, but yeah, that's kind of neat. I'm going to steal that line. You can see the old things, the old characters in there, and then the characters as they are now.
Well, I look at, yeah, I just look at it this way. I mean, Les Moore. One, when I finally figured out the character's name, Les Moore. I mean, it was just. I think I was probably somewhere around 8 or 9 or 10 or something. And I'm like, Les Moore. Oh my God, I never got it before. That's so funny, And he becomes essentially for a long period of time one of the most central figures of the strip,
right.
Almost pushing Funky to the D-level list of characters.
Oh no, everybody pushed Funky backwards. Yeah. It was like, and that's because of the type of humor I was writing. When I was in high school, a buddy of mine and I used to get together and we'd make these tapes and we would do like interviews. And so one of us would be the interviewer and the other guy would be the interviewee, which would be something like the world's only one-legged golfer, people, stuff like that. And we do these things. And so I sort of carried that over. So Funky became the interviewer, and then everybody, he sort of became the central spoke, and everybody else sort of,
Yeah.
He almost became like the eyes of the reader.
Yeah.
He was there to, he did the take at the end of everything and looked at the reader. And he didn't really come into his own until after the time jumps. And he started to do.
And speaking of the time jump, I want to get into that. So in the early 90s, you basically, like I said, I guess I don't want to say retcon or reboot, but you took the book and you moved it from being a high school kind of physical comedy, and you moved it so that the characters were actually now aging in real time, correct?
Yes, more or less. The first kids took 20 years to get out of high school. I think the second kids, the second bunch took 5 or 6 years. We've never had a really sharp bunch, but I'm sort of moving it along and trying to keep that happen. And I happen to be on top of that right now because the book that was just released, the Kent State University Press, under the imprint of Black Squirrel Press, they changed that just so they have deniability. Are bringing out the complete Funky Winkerbean, and we have just hit that what you talked about. I think it's 89 to 92 or 90 to 92, and that's the time jump takes place in that third year. And it was Funky's 20th anniversary, so I think it's probably one of the things that kind of spun it around so if it's going to happen, it better happen now, or it's never going to happen. And I'm so glad that I did, because I would really hate to be, my age and just writing solely about kids in high school.
Right.
That's what happened to all those other high school strips.
Right.
It's not a pretty picture.
Were you nervous at that point, though, making such a big move, and knowing that you had a fan base? There must have been some kind of trepidation of, it's like the new Coke thing, people might revolt on this thing.
I think more people were worried about it than I was at the time, and it's kind of funny, but I was really up on it. And again, I was really working on things ahead, and I was really excited about it. And it would just take people's comments or somebody to bring me up and sort of make me face reality, to sort of have the chills set in a little bit. But I like when I took it to the syndicate, I had everything prepared. I had storyboards. I showed them what was going to happen. And I remember talking to the promotion manager, and I said, Leslie's going to be an English teacher. Bull's going to come back. He's going to coach the football team. Crazy Harry's going to work in the post office. He like that. And, there were a whole bunch of, everything, except for, as you pointed out before, he says, so what happens with Funky? And I go, that's the funny thing. You should bring that up. I really don't know exactly what Funky's going to be doing. And at that point, he changed from his Bruce Wayne voice to his Batman voice. Because when will you know? And I'll tell you what, I'll call you back in a half hour. And that's when Funky changed. It was the best half hour I ever spent in my life, because it was, and we were in the midst of a recession. There were kids graduating from college. You couldn't get jobs. And I thought, I was telling him all these jobs that everybody else got. I thought, what if Funky can't get a job? What if he lives at home for a while and has to deliver pizzas for Montoni's? I already had a pizza place, so that worked out well. And then eventually, he works his way up. He takes his business degree, works his way into sort of management of Montoni's, and now he's the owner of Montoni's. And it turned out to be just a wonderful situation. And not only that, it provided me, when I was making the time jump, I had no idea where the second stage was. I didn't know I needed one. It's only in hindsight that I realized that Montoni's became the stage for my new characters, a place to hang out. I could still bring the high school kids through, but so now I had two stages. And down the road, I would develop a third one with Les and Lisa's house. And that's where, Lisa's story would take place, where the character would pass away. And so those became important things. And I think maybe I was being a little too, cavalier about it. And maybe that's what you got to be, or else you wouldn't do it. I don't know.
Did you find you had a lot of support from your fellow artists and strip writers out there?
I don't know. I mean, I will, when I run into them, I'll bump into people and stuff, and people will, you sort of get the vibe that, they think Funky's pretty cool and it's pretty neat what you did. But I also occasionally get a feeling that I've betrayed the code or something, that I've dared not to do a gag every day, and that I've, I get it professionally, and there's certainly a cadre of people out there. I even had a guy email me one time. He said, "You are ignoring your fiduciary responsibility under your contract to produce a funny strip."
Oh boy.
And I told him, I said, it doesn't say that in my contract, but it does make quite a few points about trying to do the best work I can do. So that's what I'm
doing. Yeah, excellent.
The Sunday strip mafia.
Oh yeah, I know.
Oh, they're very conservative in terms of comic thinking. They don't want to see changes. They don't want to see things happen.
I laugh at Marmaduke. Funky Winkerbean's not making me laugh like Marmaduke.
I just keep plunging ahead in spite of all that, and it just, I'm writing the strip for myself and more these days, and I'm just trying to write what I would like to read if I were reading a newspaper. This is what I'd like to look at and see. And I also like to look at the other things that are in the paper, too. I enjoy reading other strips, but this is, I'd be looking for something like this.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. All right, well, let's do some PSAs, some public service announcements.
We're going to follow our rules here.
Rules and regulations. So, Tom, hold tight. We're going to do a couple of great public service announcements and some commercials for other shows you can find here on 88.1. We'll be back in a few moments.
Sounds good.
Sparky the Fire Dog here. Protect your family from fire. Make sure your home has smoke alarms in every bedroom, outside your sleeping areas, and on every level of your home, even your basement. For games and activities, go to sparky.org.
We want to keep you, your family, and your community safer from fire. This message brought to you by the National Fire Protection Association and your local fire department. Visit sparky.org.
Hipsters, flipsters, and finger-popping daddies. Hipsters, flipsters, and finger-popping daddies. Knock me your lobes.
I'm DJ Cheshire Cat, host of Wonderland. From punk to prog, novelty to new romantic, funk to future jazz, rap to rock, Wonderland has a place for it. Join me every Saturday morning from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., and we'll go down the rabbit hole of eclectic and eccentric music together here on WESU Middletown, 88.1 FM.
This is Jerry Ordway, the guy who killed Superman. Whatever you do, don't listen to Pint of Comics.
Hi, I'm Harry Anderson. For a good, uncomplicated way to exercise, take a walk. At any age, walking is one of the best ways to keep your heart fit and your joints limber, without the injuries that jogging or some aerobics can cause. Ask your shoe salesman for a shoe that's designed for walking. And ask your doctor to help you plan an exercise walking program that's right for you. Soon, you'll be on the road to better health.
A message from the Will Rogers Institute, wrinstitute.org.
Hi, this is Billy Johnstone, host of the Broadway Radio Hour. Join me every second and fourth Sunday of the month from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. as I feature the best of Broadway from old classics to last night's curtain, as well as exciting interviews with some of Broadway's brightest stars. The Broadway Radio Hour, right here on WESU Middletown.
Your mom had an accident. I'll take you to her. Uh-oh.
Look, Wild Bill.
Who was that?
Some stranger. He said Donnie's mom was hurt. I didn't know if I should go with him.
Well, just don't do what a stranger says. Check it out with an adult you know. Remember, a stranger
can mean danger. Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
We're back. Pint of Comics, WESU.
You know, it's funny. I was going to get in the car with a stranger right after this. And I feel, thankfully, Wild Bill from G.I. Joe talked me out of it. Imagine what could have happened, John.
I wonder what people think if they're in the studio with us and we're playing these PSAs, and I'm just giggling away because I think they're all so ridiculously silly. But
yeah. Didn't play the Nicolas Cage one tonight.
No.
But that's usually a weekly thing. That's a good one.
My sister is pretty much out on that one at this point.
88.1 FM, WESU Middletown, WESU FM.org if you want to stream us. And we are talking to Tom Batiuk, the creator, writer, he's the guru of Funky Winkerbean. now, Tom, we were checking some stuff out, and I was surprised to see this. At one point, you actually had, because we're Pino Comics, you had John Byrne working on the strip with you.
Yeah, John. I met him at a Mid-Ohio Comic Con in Ohio. Oh wow, this is way back when. This is before he was on Superman. Before he had gone.
Wow.
And stuff in DC. And it was just great. He he was a terrific guy. I really admired what he did. We became good friends. And there was one point I had some surgery. He was kind of laid up for a while. And we'd gotten a little behind on Funky, and so I asked if John if he'd sit in and do, I don't know what he did. It was quite a few number of weeks, like 8 or 9 weeks maybe.
Wow.
And it was gorgeous stuff. And it was like, I don't know, like this fanboy inking John Byrne Funky strips. It was like so cool. I totally admire his work. I think he is one of the top comic book artists ever. He draws people just sitting down, doing nothing. And they look better than anybody running around and flying through the air. It's just, it's incredible.
Now,
He's a terrific artist.
When he did your strip, did he attempt to emulate your style, or was it his own? Were they trying to keep it as close to your style, or did you just say do what you do best for these 8 or 9 weeks?
Well, I'll tell you what. He came in at a point, and there was a point you don't get a year ahead by accident. And so I had been working. Actually, I was doing another strip called John Darling at the time, also. So I was doing 3 strips, and if something happened, there was going to be big trouble because you're on 6-week deadlines with each of these. So Chuck Ayers, a guy I went to Kent State with, was doing Crankshaft. He was also the editor. He was a staff artist at the Akron Beacon Journal. And we needed to get ahead. We could see there were things looming, family health issues with our parents and things like that. And it would be good to pad the schedule a little bit. And so we got on it and did it. So Chuck, in order to lure him away from the Beacon Journal and make it possible for him to do that, came in and helped me with penciling on Funky. And so he was doing that. And at the same time, I was starting to write much more mature stuff and I had a vision for where I'd like the work to be. So in comes John, does his little sit-in week. And what John does, he doesn't go all the way back to Funky. He doesn't do it John Byrne style. He created sort of a middle ground style. It was genius. I mean, he's amazing. And it was just beautiful. And when we finished those weeks, I just told Chuck, I said, we're doing them like this from now on. So he sort of helped me create what has been the ongoing look in Funky, because his work was a little more angular. It changed things a lot. But it wasn't such a jump that you couldn't, it wasn't so jarring that you didn't, get it. And people absorbed it pretty quickly. There was a little bit of a bump because, people like things exactly the way they've always seen it. But it was fine, and like I say, it was just, John just has this knack that's absolutely amazing. And he made all of a sudden my Funky characters started to look a little more like real people, even though they weren't. It was a hybrid style, but it was great. And that's where it's remained, because it's absolutely perfect. I mean, I don't want to do, Rex Morgan or something like that. I like it right where it's at.
And John was telling me earlier, I think I had read it as well. One of John's friends and a friend of yours, Tony Isabella, is actually has been worked into it as a character in your strip.
Yeah,
you're buddies with Tony, correct?
Yeah, Tony lives in Medina. Yeah, and I've used it more than once. Probably the most obvious example was when I was running those, where Holly was hunting down the Starbuck Jones covers, and she went all kinds of different places to get covers, comic shops and online and all kinds of places. She was trying to finish her son's collection while he was in Afghanistan as a surprise for him. And she came back she needed one more, and she came back from Comic-Con San Diego, couldn't find it, and ends up finding it in Tony's garage sale. Tony holds these little garage cons, and he'll hold, 3 or 4 of them over the course of the summer in his garage. It's kind of cool. He even had guests one time. Mike Barr and I were guests at one of his.
Oh, jeez.
So you're a guest at a garage con. That's great. We're going to have Tony on the show, March 4th, I think. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, we're very excited about that.
Well, you want to be a guest at Tony's Garage Con because he serves pizza. So, hey, I'm there, yeah, so it was fun. So, Tony, I put Tony in, and I think he enjoyed it. He did make some kind of comment where he made me look like the Penguin. intentional. And so it was a lot of fun. And Tony's a great guy, so I love being able to do that.
It's always fun to bring in some of the real into the strip like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantasy
Absolutely.
meets reality.
Yeah, if you ever have any of your characters being interviewed on the radio, feel free to use us as inspiration.
Okay. I'm writing that down. I'm pretending to write that down. You can't see me right now.
You put it in one of those notebooks with all your bad ideas.
I'm actually wondering if Mr. Ganache here is aware that Crazy Harry used to do such a thing as air guitar competitions.
Oh, I've heard those are a real thing in real life.
Yeah,
so
yeah. They took up a lot of space in the strip.
Yeah, they did. That was a lot of fun. He went to the air guitar finals in was it Oulu, Finland, or something?
Oh, yeah.
And won. So I mean, I can ride an idea a long ways.
Yeah, you're playing the long game. So you were saying before that these are coming out in a definitive kind of editions. I can only imagine how many are there at this point.
Volume 7 of the Complete Funky Winkerbean is just out. And if there's no, I have no endpoint in mind, so it's going to be kind of a rolling thing. If Black Squirrel Press, Kent State University Press, keeps bringing them out, we'll keep doing them. When we first did it, I had actually gone in after the success of the Lisa storybook that they did, and I was pitching a book that I thought was like Lisa's story. It was from Crankshaft, dealing with Alzheimer's story, and it's a really good. And they did that. It was a really good book. I was hoping they would do that. I took in 2 other ideas. I had like about 70 or 80 emails and stuff from people asking if there would be a Complete Funky. And so, and I also took in a collection of all the baseball strips from Crankshaft. Those were the ones that they were supposed to like kick to the corner. And I go, oh, that's too bad, but I'm glad you're doing the Alzheimer's book, and those were my sacrificial goats. But they did them. So they're going to do the Complete Funky, and that first night, I wake up at 3 in the morning, I'm going, oh my God, what did I just do? What are those early strips like? But it has actually turned out to be a lot of fun. I love writing the intros. They are, I'm throwing in all kinds of stuff. The one Volume 7 now, it actually has all the lawsuit, the filings and everything in court from when I fought the Hearst Corporation to get ownership of Funky. And it's got all that kind of, backstory I'm throwing in. It's really helped me clean my studio, actually. I find all this junk and I put it in the book, and it's great. And they are a lot of fun. And the strips are holding up. And like I said, we've just gotten to the time jump. So it's a lot of, that's nice to really have that. And also, the Kent State University Press, just this past fall, brought out a box set called the Lisa's Legacy Trilogy, where we took Lisa's story, which they had printed 10 years ago, and added a book called Prelude and a book called The Last Leaf. And it's this box set that tells the entire, it takes Lisa's story and puts it in the context of Lisa's life. And she was a character that kind of kicked off things for me in terms of doing work of more substance. She was a girl in high school who became pregnant. And that story opened a door for me, and she just kept opening them all along the way, right through Lisa's story and on. And so that stuff was all brought out. So, and if people are looking for those, let me do my plug.
Yeah, absolutely. No, run it out.
If people are doing those, they can go to funkywinkerbean.com. It's my website. There's a lot of cool things like my blog and other stuff there. But they can also go to books, and all these books are available. It takes you right to Amazon, and they sell them cheaper than anybody. I like bookstores, and I like to send people to bookstores, but that's a very easy way to find this stuff.
And I'm going to ask because you've mentioned it more than once, and you kind of alluded to her last days. I'm assuming the Lisa story is a terminal story, or
yeah, it was a story of Lisa's cancer. I had done it once. I did the story where she got cancer, went into remission, and I thought that was pretty much the end of all of that, and that was good. And then I was diagnosed with cancer, and I realized, I just really only touched the surface of this story. And so I went back. And I had already told this story with her and had her go into remission. So the next step, story-wise, and as a writer, the next challenge was, how do you do something like this and not have it have a happy ending in the comic strip? And it was, and that probably engendered more comments from people, pro and con. Luckily, mostly pro. People were very generous. They gave me the space to tell that story. But there were a lot of people that hated the fact that Lisa died in the comic strip. But yeah, that was how that story ended. And then, like I say, in this box set, Lisa is still rather ubiquitous in this strip. So there is a book called The Last Leaf that collects her ongoing presence in the life of her husband, her daughter, and the people she knew.
And I should say, Lisa was Les Moore's wife.
Yes.
Lisa Moore.
So, yeah. Les, you gotta look at Les as one of those characters that he was put upon as a kid in high school. He goes on to be something slightly successful to very successful, and then remaining the dedicated husband all the way through this situation. And it's a tragic story, but it's not a. I mean, I hate to say it's not a sad story. It is a sad story, but it's a very, very good.
Well, yeah, a tragic story doesn't have to be necessarily a sad story throughout.
Right.
There's learning, there's dealing, there's
and it's Les who's this.
No, there is humor in there.
Yeah.
Les went with Lisa to all of her chemotherapy sessions, so she called him her chemosabi. You can do stuff like that, And that I actually heard from a lady while I was researching. I went with somebody to the daughter of a friend to her chemotherapy sessions, and I just started hearing all this stuff. And there's things I wouldn't have had the nerve to do that I put in the strip. If I'd have just thought of it, I said, no, I can't do that. But at the chemotherapy thing, usually the setups are there's 2 beds to a room, like a chair and a bed, actually, 2 stations. But there was one that had like 8, and they had a sign over it that said "party room." I wouldn't have. It was funny, yeah. And going to those, it wasn't dour. I mean, the talk is certainly different. It's about trials that you can get into and all kinds of stuff like this. But the people were upbeat. They were positive. There was humor. It wasn't the same, but that's what makes this job fun. It makes it to get up in the morning and challenge yourself to do something you've never done before. And Lisa's story certainly did that. And I have to say, I'm starting to recognize I doubt that I will ever reach that level again in the strip, because that was just a pretty intense time.
And well received, at least from this reader. I mean,
well, thank you.
Well, it was so different. It was just, it's unusual for a comic strip of Funky Winkerbean's base to come out and have this kind of very, very in-depth storyline, and that's, I think I appreciate that more because of the origins of the character. So I don't know, that's just me though.
Oh yeah, well, it certainly is gratifying for me, and it's fun. It's to have this history that you can now go back in and tap into and play with, which I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'm glad I've had a chance to kind of grow up, let my characters grow up with me. It's the ideal situation. Some cartoonists get it, Gasoline Alley. That was certainly the case. Doonesbury, for better or for worse, to a certain extent, she sort of stopped it at one point, but and then kind of went back and is reprinting older strips, I guess. But there aren't many.
Yeah. I think that story does sound fantastic. It sounds like a heavy read, but it sounds like a good read. I can picture the only person or people that would have a problem with it is the guy who sent you the email about the fiduciary responsibilities, or the priorly mentioned comic book mafia, because Marmaduke never got cancer.
Yeah, no, it'll probably be the it's already gotten the imprimatur. It was a Pulitzer finalist, so I'm done. That was great. I can't, between that and my my Inkpot Award from Comic-Con, I am like, I don't need anything else. I've got it all. So that was nice to get that recognition for that story.
What about another animated show? You don't want to ever do that again?
Oh, I would love to do that. You know, I have just finished up a 10-year flirtation with Hollywood on the Crankshaft side, and before that, Funky, and I have been with the best. I have. Funky was even optioned by Disney for a while.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, it was like, but we have flirted and flirted, but we've never managed to hook up. It never worked. And I sort of get it. You know, it's not an easily. It's the very thing we talked about at the top. It's a hard thing to wrap your arms around and categorize what Funky is.
I would think, though,
as you tried to make me do.
Yeah, well, yeah. I would think, though, that with the way that the Adult Swim animated shows and some of the other programs that are out there, that you'd have an easier time now. But I don't know. So
you heard it here first. Disney couldn't buy Funky Winkerbean, so they bought George Lucas instead. With that, the $209 billion was originally for Funky.
Losers.
We'd be on episode 9 of Funky the movie at this point.
Hayden Christensen
that's
is Funky.
Fine, though. You know, I really. That's okay. I'm fine with it. The success Funky's had has been great. I get to get up every day and work on this strip. So it's. I'm not complaining. I mean, that's not to say it wouldn't have been a lot of fun, but I'm not complaining.
Have you ever had a point in the 46 years that you've been doing it that you did think, well, this is enough, or I'm just, or maybe even a creative period where you were just like, I don't know, I have nothing left for these people, for these characters, or have you been pretty solidly positive throughout the whole thing?
No, no, it's been good. I tend to be surprised by where this continues to go for me. No, it's been a great unfolding movie. You know, I don't know where it all goes yet, but that's been fantastic. And by the way, going back to what you're talking about being on television, you can when you have Tony Isabella on, you can tell Tony that I am not the least bit jealous about Black Lightning being on television.
We also, other than the radio show here, John and I have a podcast by the same name, and we the last 4 episodes. We talked about Black Lightning when it first came out on one episode, and every episode since then, we keep bringing it up and going, we don't want to jam everybody with Black Lightning, but it's such a good show. And then the next episode comes out again, and we got to talk about Black Lightning again because it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I'm really happy for Tony. But that's very cool, actually.
So, other than Funky and Crankshaft, I mean, are those the only 2 strips you're working on now, or are you still doing other stuff?
No, that's it. That's really way more than I need to. But like I said, I did John Darling for a while. In fact, going back, if people go to the website, I'm sort of rerunning the John Darling Sundays every Sunday. How clever is that? I put another John Darling Sunday up so people want to see what we did. That one doesn't hold up quite the same way because the strips were very, very timely. In fact, I think, if I'm not sure, I just put up one this morning. It was Bob Hope at Pebble Beach. Yeah. So, but that's what that strip was. He was a TV host, and I worked with a terrific artist named Tom Armstrong who could caricature people beautifully. And so we brought all these people on the show. So it's very timely. There was one I read recently about who killed Laura Palmer, and I'm like, who the hell was Laura Palmer?
Well, it's kind of timely again. Twin Peaks came back this year.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's good. I'll have to check those out. That's on the website that you've got, Funky Winkerbean.
Yeah, it's on the blog, and they're tagged. If you just want to see the John Darling, they're all tagged off.
Oh, nice. Definitely check those out.
And we've talked about it a few times. What is Crankshaft about? What is the idea behind Crankshaft?
The idea behind Crankshaft was wanting to own one of my own characters for the first time. I was chafing under the fact that I had signed a contract at 23 that gave away all the rights to my characters in perpetuity throughout the universe, yada, yada, yada. And I was getting ready to go to court and try to get that matter resolved. Crankshaft gave me an opportunity to own one of my own characters, and so I took this took a character on Funky. It was based on my school bus driver, Ed Crankshaft, and spun him over into this strip because he'd been getting so much response as a character. He was the second one. The band director, as you mentioned earlier, really got a huge acknowledgement by people right away. Same thing happened with Crankshaft. And so we spun him off into his own strip, and it's turned out to be a lot of fun. It's kind of my it's a lot funnier than Funky. No, it's funnier old style. I just like doing a lot of really old style things. Like I don't know, was it today? Like today's Crankshaft. I was wondering where I saw that. I was reading Crankshaft today, and his friend's coming back from rehab. He'd hurt his knee. And Crankshaft called it kneehab. And he's reading the instructions, and it said, well, you should do these twice a day for 3 weeks, and then, maybe start doing them once a week, and then lose this paper and never do them again. He goes, these are the most realistic instructions I've ever had to read. So it's, I like it. It's a fun strip to kind of play with. Although it has its moments too. Like I say, we had that the Alzheimer's storyline when the next door neighbor lady died of Alzheimer's.
And unfortunately around here, Crankshaft, I don't think is carried in one of the local papers. Funky is pretty much everywhere, but I know Crankshaft, the first time I discovered it was, I think, in Comic Relief magazine, maybe, where they'd reprint all the strips.
Oh, okay, sure.
I think that's the first time I saw it. If it wasn't there, it was maybe online or in a collection, possibly.
Yeah. How long has Crankshaft been?
Well, thanks for bumming me out. By the way, go ahead.
Well, it was depressing for me. I mean, it's like, oh, he's got another strip. I want to read it, but I can't find it anywhere. It was.
Yeah.
But I've seen it quite a bit since then. So.
New England hates Crankshaft. Is what John's saying.
Well, they're weird around here with the strips. I mean, I worked for the Hartford Courant for a number of years, and they would try and change some of the strips occasionally, and they'd do a ballot of your favorite strips, which one you think should be dropped for replacement, which one would you like to bring in, and I remember it was so divisive with people. Oh, the complaints that people. Oh.
When they dropped Rex Morgan, you just didn't know what to do.
Well, people would go nuts.
Yeah,
you'd have cancellations.
Because every single one of those strips, somebody is attached to some way, shape, or form.
That was it. That was the point I was just going to make. We can make fun of that, but it's a unique art form in that way, because especially it's just not going to be that way going forward. But it was in people's homes every day. It came in the newspaper. And then there's no other art form where people could build that kind of bond up, and I think that's why those relationships were kind of special.
No, and that's why I appreciate people like you and the people that do the Cullen Murphy with his father with Prince Valiant. Is that again? It's the long game. It's like a comic book artist or a novelist, they get a shot a month every month. Someone who makes a movie gets a shot every few years. You guys are doing these stories every single day. And especially when you start doing them in the style when you change it up a bit, where it's a serialized story, it's just that amazes me that you have that kind of output that you can do these things. I appreciate that totally.
Me too.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have all day.
Hey, don't downplay yourself. I'm giving you a lot of credit here. Listen to him. He's like, anybody can do it. He's like, as a matter of fact, if you don't have a strip in a newspaper, you're kind of an idiot.
Oh boy! Well,
I
Tom,
appreciate those comments. That's very nice.
No, it's great. No, Tom, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. We're winding down here to our last 4 minutes of the program. I suppose we should.
This is where we give out the prizes and things.
This is where you tell everyone where they can find your stuff.
Okay, yeah. In case they missed that shameless plug earlier.
Shameless plug part 2.
Yeah.
Shameless plug part 2 is if they want to find the Lisa's Legacy trilogy or the Funky collections, or the Alzheimer's book from Crankshaft, or the Crankshaft baseball book. Really, the simplest place, FunkyWinkerbean.com. It's all right there. You can look over all the books, and you can also look over all the really early Funky books that cost you $1 million on eBay if you want to pick one up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, those are hard
but
to
they're out
find.
there. But that's the go-to place for them, and it's a very easy way to find them.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for coming on.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed it. This is a
has
fast
been
hour
great.
thing.
Yeah, it's unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the way it always works. Is
Yeah.
we wait all day to do this, and then it's over in an hour, and a really fast hour at that.
Well, say hi to Tony for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to ask him how he feels about being inserted into your comics, and also we're going to ask him about the pizza at TonyCon, at the Garage Con.
A Garage Con, yeah. Man, I have to tell you, I think I call it the Garage Con. I don't think Tony does that, but it should be Garage Con.
We'll mention that to him. Hey, you want to hang out for a second? I'll talk to you off the air.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks. So, Pint of Comics.
Pint of Comics.
Winding down here.
Uncle John in the other room. He's ready to get in here with some Dead Air, the greatest hour and a half of live Grateful Dead that you're ever going to listen to. And then after that, I'm assuming, unless John's here for the long haul, we got Psychedelic Rick and the Psychedelicatessen, the usual Sunday night block.
The usual
Sunday night block here at WESU FM. That was good. Tom was very good.
Yeah, it's always good to have the.
I'm going to go home and check out the website because I'm very curious about this Lisa story.
Oh, it's excellent.
Yeah,
it's excellent.
I'm always looking for good stuff to read, and something like that, it's a little daunting because Volume 7 is only up to 20 years ago, so I don't know if I would be able to get too far into that. But like, if there are books that I could definitely jump into,
you know me and being a completionist. So.
Yeah, what, you got all 80 volumes of the Charles Schultz Peanuts? It's in storage, but he's got all 80 volumes.
Hey, as soon as I heard that Funky was being collected in similar format, I'm all over it. We got to start getting those. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're up to Volume 7.
Yeah.
We definitely implore you, if you're out there, to check it out because Tom's a cool guy, and Funky Winkerbean's been around for 46 years. So if you're bored, don't ever say you're bored. There's always something to do or read.
We never suggest anything to read. What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah, right. I'm going to suggest you listen to Dead Air right after this.
I would too.
Yeah.
Because it's a good show.
It is a good show. I like the fact that when you listen to Dead Air, I was listening to it on the ride home a couple weeks ago, and like, I just got to ask John after. I'll ask him off the air. Like, he has like, okay, that was whatever song it was from the San Francisco Cow Palace, May 14th, 1980. I'm like, how the hell does he know I mean, I know it's all, kind of like passed around, but it's like, wow, he's got the dates and everything. Pontiac Silverdome, May 15th, 1987.
Yeah.
Like, wow. That's some severe catalog skills.
It's all memorized. I know he's got every one of them memorized.
Think he's got it all up there?
I think so.
All right. Well, it's Pint of Comics. It's Sir John and Johnny Ganache, and
I guess
see you next week.
See ya.
Scratching at the surface now, and I'm trying hard to work it out. And so much has gone misunderstood.